All right, David, thanks so much for being here today. I'm excited to have you on as a guest.
Happy to be there. It's a pleasure. Thank you, Cheryl.
You and I have a very long history. We met when you were a reporter, or actually, maybe you were an editor, and you were covering the mess that was happening at the college I was working at.
That's true. I was. It wasn't a mess though. Francisco Rodriguez was there. He was great.
He was great. No, but it was tough. We were going through a lot lawsuits, votes of no confidence, lots of drama, and you covered us so fairly that when your newspaper did layoffs, Dr. Francisco Rodriguez, who was the president, came to me and said, "Hey, this David Ogul guy, he did such a great job covering us, and he's looking for work." There you go. Even if you have bad news, if it's covered well, yeah, you can get hired.
Yeah. Right.
What was it like to be a reporter and an editor?
So my yeah, I had a long career as a in journalism in newspapers, and I had worked as an editor for the last 15 or 16 years of a 32-year career in newspapers. And it's much different being a reporter than it is an editor. Um, so it's fun. I mean, I love telling stories. And what more could you ask for than a job that pays you to go out and talk to people and learn about things and you have to become an expert in like about 30 minutes on some subject you didn't know about even like an hour before. But it's a blast. It's a blast, like here at Grossmont College, talking to students who are coming here from around the world, professors who are just have a fascinating background, and then writing about them or promoting the college. And yeah, so it's much different than what I'm doing now, but working it prepares you well. So Cheryl, the one thing I tell everybody is that back in the this was back 12 years ago. That was a long time ago. I don't remember how long ago it was, but it was in the fallout from the Great Recession, and there was a lot of layoffs. A lot of people were out of work. And what I learned is that no matter what job you're in, you could be a manager at a restaurant, or you could be an editor at a newspaper. There are certain skills that you could take from whatever profession, whatever job you're in, that are applicable elsewhere. In this case, writing, editing, managing your time, managing people, all that, being able to market yourself. When you're a reporter, you're trying to market your story to your editor. So when you're, in your public relations or community relations, it's the same thing. You're marketing your product to the community. So those skills transfer, and in this case, very well, because a lot of it, as you have like some great storytellers over there at Graduate. It's transferable, and it really wasn't difficult at all.
It's interesting you bring that up because I've had the chance to meet, I don't even know how many dozens of directors of communications for community colleges. And I'd say the majority of them actually come from a background as a reporter. I mean, I did myself, you did. A lot of my current clients used to be reporters. And I think it does translate over well, right? I had never thought about, though, the fact that you have to pitch yourself every day as a reporter. And I think that's something that a lot of our communication directors aren't actually very strong at, is pitching themselves.
Really? Wow. Wow.
Yeah, because they work so hard and they forget the fact that they have to showcase what they've been working on, and they need to talk about it and take the time to convince other people that they're doing a great job.
Right. Well, that's what they're doing. They're pitching their product to the community, or to community leaders, to politicians, to the chancellors, whoever it may be, and to prospective students. And it's the same sort of skill, the same sort of persuasive if you're successful, uh, arguments that that you're doing when you're a reporter, definitely to when you're pitching a story to your editor. And then even with me, when I was an editor, I was an assistant metro editor, but I still had editors above me. I wasn't the publisher, and you'd still have to pitch the stories to your assistant city editor or the metro editor or what have you. It's again, it's a transferable skill. One thing I will say that it is, at least in my case, one thing that wasn't transferable was the marketing element of um, the ad buys and that sort of thing. That was new. The requisitions, the purchase orders, that was new. So
So,
that was a learn on the job thing.
so you started as a reporter, you had a great career, and then you became a freelancer and you did freelance writing and you started off doing some freelance writing for MiraCosta College. And then you grew, right? You grew a really successful business writing for colleges really across the Western United States.
Yeah, yeah. Yes. I did again, it's taken the skills that you already have, and one of them was writing and telling a story. Um, but I also did a lot of freelance work for like the Los Angeles Times, the Union Tribune, the company that laid me off, the Baltimore Sun, my papers in Florida, and some publications I had never even heard of. But that sort of dried out when AB9 was passed in California. And so yeah, the focus became it was greater focus on community colleges, and it really did start with MiraCosta. And you probably know the story better than I do. I only heard it secondhand, but I started doing work with you or for you and at MiraCosta. And I think that a couple people said, "Hey, who's writing your stories? Where are you getting this? Where do you find the time to do this?" And your reputation kind of follows you. And luckily, I didn't screw up too badly, and I still had a halfway decent reputation that it went, kind of spread from there. You also market yourself. I was reaching out to, San Diego Community College District, Southwestern. Think some professional coworker of mine has told me about the chancellor's office up in Sacramento, and that's been a good relationship. So, and then ultimately it led to this job, which is. It was supposed to only be a few weeks, but it's been about a year and a half now as interim director of college and community relations. Is a fancy term for director of marketing and communications at Grossmont College, and it's been a blast.
I remember when you let me know that you were going to take the interim job, and I said, "Oh, how long are you going to be, in that position?" And you're like, "Oh, probably a couple weeks." And I was like, "No, you're not. I guarantee you that you will be there at least 6 months." And now it's 18 months.
You would know. I heard that there was a some kind of like lottery on amongst the PIOs that I was working for, as to no, it's going to be a year, no, it's going to be 2 years, and there was quite the range there, but nobody said. I think the shortest anybody said was 6 months to the end of the year. But I have no regrets. This has been great. I've learned so much. And the great thing, there are a lot of awesome elements about this job. You've done it. It's during a trying time. Talk about throwing you into the fire or learning by fire or whatever that phrase is. It was during COVID. And as we were coming back from COVID, then, one step forward, 3 steps back, 2 steps forward, 5 steps back. And sometimes you just, I'm going to jump off the cliff. But but it was a challenge. When you're faced with a challenge, it's like when my kids were young, I used to always tell them that, when you're faced with a crisis, you have two choices. You could either succeed or you could fail, and failure is not an option. So you're going to succeed. So just do whatever it takes to succeed. But then once like this semester really is when we saw the difference, because we came back last 2021 in the fall, not full time, but this year it's like the first day of fall classes, there were so many people on campus. It was so amazing, and it was like all this work that you had, everybody at the college, but that you had contributed to. And then you see the fruition of it, and it was just awesome. I mean, the first week of school, the first day of school it was really inspiring, because, after a while you get depressed, of declining enrollment. It's not working, and you just kind of, what am I wasting my time for? And then you see that, wait a minute, it did have an impact. It is having an impact, and enrollment in our district, in fact, is up a little bit.
That's
As it
great.
is, yeah, as it is through most of San Diego County.
Yeah. Yeah, it's easy, I think, to look at the numbers though and forget that there's people behind all of those numbers. And when we're all isolated in our houses and not seeing the students and the energy on campus, it does get depressing. You just see these numbers go down, down, down.
Yeah,
But these are all people who are still trying to, better their lives. I
yeah,
thought it would be really interesting to have you on the podcast because I get asked quite frequently by people who maybe are outside of community colleges or higher education, or who are in community colleges and higher ed, but in different roles, what it would take to become the director of marketing. So a lot of people actually, they aspire to the role that you've been filling for the last 18 months as interim. And I thought it would be interesting to talk to someone that had a career like yours, that's done so many interesting, great things, to see how would you tell someone to prepare for this job? Like what was unexpected for you, and what about your background have you found the most useful?
wow. Sometimes it's it's better to be lucky than good. I don't know. I mean, there was an opening for this position. It hadn't been filled for a while, and you know, Ann Kruger was the director of government and community relations for the district, and she kind of like scoped me out. She just wanted to know, took the temperature of the room, so to speak. And then I knew Dr. Marcia Gable, who was the interim president at the time, and I had worked with her at Queen Maca because I was an acting over there, acting PIO. It was part-time, but and so she, your reputation follows you. And so for me, I don't know, it was I guess I don't know if I could answer that question with authority. I could just talk from my experience. I had been, as we stated earlier, I had been working with community colleges from, Texas to Sacramento, um, for a decade, and uh, and that created the connections, and those connections led to this opportunity. Um, I will say now that I have the experience, um, uh, I'm kind of like in a transition right now, but there's a greater interest now, trying to find another job if I were to leave this one, would be much easier than sort of like falling into this one. Um, but how do you prepare for it? So if you're a reporter, and there's a lot of people in the, for me, in the newspaper industry, who were looking for, after they were laid off, or didn't want to put up with not knowing whether they would be laid off when they came to work on any given day. We're looking for alternatives and to change their careers. And And that's the way it was like the last few years at the newspaper that I was working at. Um, and PR was something that many of my former reporters that I supervised and coworkers went into. But the biggest and I can't speak for people who went to work for like the city of San Diego or various county offices, and a lot of them did go that way. But really the biggest difference to the community colleges is the marketing aspect of it. And I mean, as you know, there is so much involved with ad buys and marketing strategic plans and putting those together. I did a little bit of those, some of the strategic plans when I was freelancing, but to go straight from you know journalism to doing strategic plans and ad buys, it's not an easy transition. Um, I guess if you knew somebody and you got lucky, and somebody was really desperate to hire somebody, but that's really where I think, and this is what I did. I went to UC San Diego and to their what do you call that? Uh, the the
The extended study
extended
program.
studies. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Their extended studies program. And I would, was halfway through that when this job came along, on content marketing and digital marketing. It was helped a lot. And so it helped prepare, I mean, so my advice would be, if somebody would be so foolish enough to follow it, is to go to school and go back to school and learn about the elements that you may not know about: the marketing, the advertising, the digital elements that come with this job. Because the communications part, you already know. Everybody in this business, everybody in the newspaper business or as a journalist knows the communications part. It's the other elements that that somebody may not know. And so that's where I would strongly suggest that they get some experience in doing that. And then also you could always find freelance work. Well, maybe not always, but if there is an opportunity to find some work, even if it's part-time with a college or university, do it. Learn more about the system and how it works. Learn more about the politics. So, as you know, that's always that's always interesting. But yeah, it's not, in a way it's easy, but in a way it's not. It's not what I expected. I expected it to be entirely writing, communications, news releases, really a lot of social media, and that was fine. I easy peasy. But there was this whole other side to it that I was unaware of. Does this
Yeah.
sound crazy to you, or did you have the same
No. Well,
experience?
and I think there's a couple really good takeaways. Is first, the importance of networking. And I think that a lot of younger people maybe haven't latched on to how important it is to make good connections.
Right.
Even when I first started at MiraCosta, I started off as they called it marketing coordinator, but it was really a writer. I mean, I wrote, that's what I did. And I had met the director of communications at Chico State because that's where I got my master's degree. And I think he spoke to a class or something. And I was the PIO for the sheriff's department. And so I asked him for lunch. And I remember I told him, I said, "You've got my dream job." And he laughed. He thought it was so funny. He was like close in retirement. And it was not his dream job anymore. And so I asked him, I said, how do I I'm already a PIO. What do I need to know to go into higher ed? What do you recommend? And he was fantastic. And he ended up writing me a letter of recommendation. And so I look back, and that lunch date and that letter was pivotal for me to get hired at MiraCosta. And now running my own company, networking is key. I have to talk to people and get to know them and understand. And so I think that's how you got, both of your interim jobs and continue to get work is by your reputation and your connections. So I think that's great advice. And then the other thing that I think is a big takeaway is that this job is like a cornucopia. I mean, and the better you do the job, the more you have to do,
That's
right?
true.
Because then you become the person that everyone on campus goes to for things that don't even have to do with your job, right? So I think that's great advice. Like if you're weak in one area, go take some continuing ed courses and take them at your community college. You can learn digital marketing, graphic design, writing all at your local community college. Like get a certificate. What a great way to improve yourself.
Right. Or
Yeah.
YouTube.
Yeah, or YouTube or Coursera or LinkedIn.
I
What
learned how to
what
fix your refrigerator from YouTube.
and then not to do everything, once you're in the job, what I learned, and I think you learned this too, is you just can't possibly do everything yourself, especially if you're a one-person shop or a two-person shop. You have to get help, or else you're gonna burn yourself out, right?
That is probably my biggest weakness is I can't say no.
Yeah.
And I did this when I was doing contract work is I'm going to New York for 2 weeks. Oh, well, could you take this assignment, get us back to us like in a few days? And yeah, sure. I remember us in Hawaii took my wife there for her birthday, and I was like working half the time. And so it's the same thing here. That, yeah, you're right. There's so many people coming here. Could you do this? Could you do that? This person has got an amazing story, or could you market this or market that? And you're right. You have to say no, but you can't say no, especially when it's the president that's doing the asking or the chancellor. Forget, oh, of course I could do that. Remember I said you have two options. Either succeed or fail, and failure is not an option. So, move forward. And yeah, but you're right. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. It's and a lot of it goes back to the, not just the cornucopia of what you're doing is, I think it was a Far Side cartoon. So it was our favorite cartoon when we were working at it, as every reporter knows of what I speak. And it was some guy, it was a reporter, and the editors put a blindfold on him, and there's these like sticky notes on the bulletin board, and he's got a dart, and it's like, okay, today you're going to be an expert in, and it's like, world affairs, or NFL, or all these different subjects. And yeah, again, it's a similarity between the professions.
That's so funny. I want to find that cartoon because that is so true.
Yeah.
You just never know. You never know what you're going to deal with.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
And
one of the things that I for planning purposes is we had these things called beat notes. And when you're a reporter, you have your beat, and your editor has asked you, what are you working on this week, or what are you working on tomorrow? And you would write up, at 8 o'clock this, 9 o'clock that, 10 o'clock this. This is the stories I'm working on for daily, and this is the long-term program, or the stories that I'm working on. These are the projects I have, and it's etc. And so I do that same thing as a for to manage it, be able to see what I'm supposed to do. And I have like 17 things on my beat note today, not counting my appointments. And
this podcast.
the podcast is on there. 1 o'clock podcast with Cheryl. And I've gotten to 3 of them.
Oh,
But I have been busy all day. I mean, it's been nonstop, busy, busy, busy. But I haven't been able to do any of the stuff I planned because there's always something coming up.
always.
So, yeah.
One of the things I feel is really important about the public information officer, marketing director job is writing. I feel like you really have to be an exceptional writer. Do you find that? Have you been doing a lot of writing for the president or the board or other people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not as much as I would have liked to. As I said, when I first got here, I thought it was all writing. Like, you mentioned your first PIO job that you thought it was all writing what you
It
were
was all
doing.
writing.
Yeah. And that's what I thought it was going to be. I knew, when Dr. Gable hired me here when she was the interim president, um, one of her priorities was to, and I think was a priority when I was working for you over at MiraCosta, was to boost our followers on Twitter and social media. And that was one thing that she was not happy about um, was our social media presence. And so that was a focus. And we've succeeded at it. We have something like 30,000 followers or followers on LinkedIn. But so we've taken these like really pitiful numbers and made them not so pitiful on some other platforms. But I've not been able to. I haven't had the time to write as much as I'd like to, because that's really what I like to do. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a writer. Everything else is just kind of like, it's like you know, the
Yeah.
economics and
Well,
all
and
that.
writing takes so much time too. If you want to write a great student profile, you've got to give yourself
Yeah,
hours to do that. I mean, and when you've got a million fires burning, it's hard to get to
yeah,
those longer projects.
yeah,
And I think though, from my perspective, if I was a college president and looking to hire a marketing director, writing's got to be a skill that they excel at, especially at a community college, because you end up helping the president a lot, with his or her writing.
right. Yeah,
And yeah, and I think it's as we have less reporters and less media outlets, it's a skill that's harder and harder to find. Somebody who could tell a good story and can communicate with a written word.
I found that some of the worst writers um, work at colleges and universities. So they could really use our help. Yeah, absolutely. It was really cool because, you meet with the president, you're talking with the president all day, every day. And, so much of my work is not writing. And it's just out of the blue. It was just this really cool compliment. She said, "You're a great writer." And it's like, wow, it's so yeah, it's recognized and it's appreciated. But yeah, it is a very important
Very
skill.
important.
Yeah. And my writing skill is probably TMI, but and you could edit this thing all you want. But uh but my writing's, but the best writer I ever read was my brother, who was an attorney, defense attorney, very well known. He just retired. And he was just this incredible, and is an incredible writer, very detailed, very uh uh I don't know, just the amount of detail in what he's doing. It almost seems effortless, and which when he's describing something. And it served him well as an attorney. My writing style has always been the Steinbeckian, just real simple. I just don't want to get, I don't want to get anybody lost and have these, $10 words that nobody could understand, like Time magazine used to be. Those were actually $100 words. And I found that served me well, just, simple sentences, and, having fun, being somewhat irreverent when you can. But yeah, so yeah, I love writing. And it really, I've all, you mentioned something about how long it takes. I've always found that, when you get writer's block, it's not really writer's block. It's you haven't done your job reporting. You don't have enough material. So it's not that you can't write and it takes a long time to write. It really takes it takes a longer time to report and to do the research. So once you have that, once you've, have what you need, the writing is so easy. And a lot of times, like I'm writing while I'm talking to somebody, I'll be, okay, this is what the story is. And you know, I don't want to give away too many trade secrets, but for me anyway. But uh, writing's never really been a challenge. I've always, it's what it just flows naturally. And of course, what I have the most fun with is just talking to people. It's just talking. I remember talking to Pam Lester, Dr. Lester. She's over at Mesa College, San Diego Mesa College. Absolutely wonderful person, and even well, probably not possible to even be a better president, but she was just an absolutely wonderful person. And I was doing some work for the San Diego Community College District. It was a magazine piece on her, in-house magazine piece. And we sat down with her. This first time I had met her formally. And she, you know, where are you from? You know, and I wasn't taking notes. It's like, so where are you from? She's like, the first, you know, she's from San Jose. She was born and raised in San Jose. And I go, so San Jose, you know, are you do you follow the Giants or do you follow the A's? And we ended up spending the first half hour talking about baseball and how her family always went up to Oakland Coliseum and watched the A's. And I'm like, okay, so what was probably like in the 70s. And so we're talking about the Oakland A's, Joe Rudy, Sal Bando, Bert Campanera. She can name everybody on the 72, 73, 70. What does this have to do with what we were talking about? Nothing. But I learned so much about her, and we got to know each other so well, so that, you know, an hour later, when we got to the questions about how she became how she, you know, she started off as an audiologist, that, you know, she went to school for that, and started teaching some courses as an adjunct, got hired as a dean. You know, this led to the other thing. But when you get to know a person and you're just listening to their stories, man, it's so much easier to write. And whenever I ran into her at Costco, she's retired now, and not too long ago, and you know, we're talking about the A's and the Dodgers in the 1974 World Series. It's like, we're not talking about, you know, skiff.
About grant funding. And that's a great point. That's the beauty of being a reporter and a writer, is that you have the time to get to know people. You have to, as part of your stories. And I think that's actually a beautiful takeaway from your time as a PIO, because you're so busy that sometimes you're running in between so many different things. And if you lose that time to talk to people, you're going to burn yourself out.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah,
I mean, that's the beauty of being on a college campus. There are all these amazing stories and cool people, and, you know, take the time to get to know that.
yeah, yeah. That is what makes it really rewarding.
Yeah,
It's not the
definitely.
60-hour or 70-hour weeks.
It's not the emails. They will be
Yeah.
there.
I try to keep my emails down to single digits, but it's just they keep popping up, you
Oh,
know?
they don't stop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as we wrap up our conversation, any other tips? Somebody who's looking to move into a position like yours, anything else you can think of to?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I was just thinking about that when we were talking about Dr. Lester, who really is a fabulous person. And I hope she listens to this, because I really mean it sincerely. And we need to go to a baseball. You hear that, Pam? We need to go to a baseball game now that you're not working anymore. Which is, I say that facetiously. She's working harder than she ever has, which was pretty damn hard before. But she is that you can't. You could edit this out, but you have to be genuine. You You know, cops, I used to be a cops reporter in Riverside a long time ago, back in the day of black and white TV. And we used to always say that, or the cops used to always say that they had bullshit meters.
Mm.
You know, they knew when you were just full of it. And that's the same thing, you know, you should take, that should be a takeaway no matter where you go, even if people aren't as you know, wise in that sense. I mean, you need to be genuine, you need to be yourself. um and the other thing is, and again, I don't know if this is G-rated or not, but you be the judge, is you can't be an asshole. You just have to be a good person. And if you're not a good person, if you don't like dealing with people, just, go do something else.
Yeah.
Work from home and stay away, and let the rest of us who enjoy life and enjoy being around people, do the work that needs to be done, because it is a calling. It's a great job. It is public service. This is the reason why you do it. Community colleges are the portal for so many people who have or have come from families with so little to transform their lives, and have so much more. And if you're going to get in the way of that, do something else.
Yeah. Great words of wisdom. Couldn't have said it better myself. Don't be an asshole. It's true though. I mean, you have to care. I love it. If you don't care, you're in the wrong line of work. You have to care. Right? You have to care. Well, it's always so much fun to talk to you, David. And I know you're wrapping up your time as interim director at Grossmont College. And what's next for you?
Don't know. My plans are to go back to the contract work, but there are some things that are popping up. So we'll see. I don't know. I just
Okay.
don't know. Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to see what's next, for you, and have always loved seeing your work and working alongside you. So it's exciting to see what the next chapter will bring.
Yeah. And thank you for the encouragement on This is Grossmont.
I love it. For those of you listening, David came up with a really cool hashtag and tagline, and I think it's got legs. It looks like it's working well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is we have the sign, it's a hashtag, This is Grossmont, with the griffin, the Grossmont griffin. And we put one of the banners over by the sign off the freeway, when you come off the freeway, and then it's Grossmont College, and then the thing says, This is Grossmont. So in case you were lost and you didn't know where you were, it's like,
Yeah. I love things that have multi-uses. It's directional, it's aspirational, it's
Yeah.
informative, it's perfect.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a
Alright.
pleasure, man. It's always fun getting together with you and my friends at Graduate.
Awesome. Thanks, David.
All right, cool. Be well.